It was a bright, sunny Saturday in the little neighborhood of Willow Grove. The houses sat in a neat circle, like a cozy hug around a quiet street. Kids rode bikes, dogs barked happily, and the air smelled like fresh-cut grass. In the backyard of one small house, 14-year-old Max Carter was having the best day ever. He was flying his drone, his favorite thing in the whole world. The drone buzzed and hummed, zipping through the sky like a tiny superhero. It spun in circles, dipped low, then soared high, looping like a bird that didn't have a care. Max stood there, holding the controller, his eyes glued to the little machine. A big grin stretched across his face. He could already imagine the awesome video he'd post online later. "This is gonna be epic," he whispered to himself. But not everyone in Willow Grove was happy that day. Across the wooden fence that separated Max's yard from the next house, a pair of sharp eyes watched him. Those eyes belonged to someone who didn't like drones or fun or anything that wasn't exactly her way. Those eyes were sneaky, squinting, and full of plans. What was Max about to get himself into? "Oh, you're gonna want to stick around for this, because this ordinary Saturday was about to turn into something so wild, nobody in the neighborhood would ever forget it." Max was just a regular kid, the kind you'd see riding his bike or tossing a ball with his friends. He wasn't super tall or super loud. He didn't cause trouble or break rules, but he had one thing that made him special: big dreams. Max wanted to be a filmmaker someday, making movies that people would watch with wide eyes and big smiles. His drone was his first step toward that dream. It wasn't just a toy, it was his camera in the sky. He'd saved up every penny he got for months to buy it. Birthday money, chore money, even the dollar he found in the couch cushions, it all went into a jar until he had enough. When he finally brought that drone home, he felt like he'd won the lottery. Every day after school, Max practiced flying it. He'd stand in the backyard, his fingers moving fast on the controller, teaching the drone to do tricks. He made it spin like a top, dive like a hawk, and even flip upside down. Sometimes his fingers got sore from pushing the buttons so much, but he didn't care. Every crash, every wobble, every perfect loop made him better. He'd watch the videos his drone recorded, dreaming of the day he'd make something huge. Most people in Willow Grove thought it was pretty cool. His next-door neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, would lean over the fence and say, "That's some fancy flying Max." Mrs. Lopez, who lived down the street, clapped when she saw the drone zoom by. Even the mailman gave him a thumbs up once. Max felt like he was on top of the world. But there was one person who didn't cheer, one person who didn't smile, one person who watched Max's drone like it was a monster in the sky. Her name was Ms. Linda Grayson, and she was the boss of the Homeowners Association, or the HOA. Max had a nickname for her, HOA Karen. He didn't say it to her face, of course, that would be asking for trouble. But behind her back, he and his friends whispered it and giggled. Ms. Grayson was the kind of person who noticed everything. If your grass grew a tiny bit too long, she'd send you a letter. If your mailbox tilted just a smidge, she'd knock on your door with a frown. If you left a bike in your driveway for 1 hour, you'd find a note taped to it, written in her neat, angry handwriting. "Rules are rules," she'd always say, like that explained everything. Ms. Grayson's house was right next to Max's, which was bad luck for him. Her yard was perfect, like something from a magazine. The grass was always trimmed, the flowers stood in straight rows, and her front porch didn't have a single speck of dirt. She spent her days patrolling the neighborhood looking for anything out of place. Max had seen her measuring a neighbor's fence with a ruler once, just to make sure it wasn't too tall. "Who does that?" he'd muttered to his mom, shaking his head. His mom just laughed and said, "Some people love control, Max, just steer clear of her." But steering clear wasn't so easy. Not when Ms. Grayson had decided Max's drone was her new enemy. The first time she saw it, Max was just testing a new trick in his backyard. The drone buzzed happily, spinning in a tight circle. Max was so focused he didn't notice Ms. Grayson standing on her porch, her arms crossed tight. She didn't say anything that day, but her eyes followed the drone like a cat watching a mouse. Max felt a shiver when he finally saw her, but he shrugged it off. "She's just grumpy," he told himself. "She'll get over it." He was wrong. Ms. Grayson wasn't the kind of person who got over things. She was the kind of person who made plans, big plans, sneaky plans, the kind of plans that could turn a kid's happy hobby into a giant mess. Max didn't know it yet, but those sharp eyes watching him weren't just annoyed, they were dangerous. What was she up to? That's the question that hung in the air like a storm cloud nobody could see coming. Max kept flying his drone that Saturday, not knowing what was brewing next door. He sent it high above the trees, the camera catching the whole neighborhood in one big sweep. The houses looked tiny from up there, like toys in a game. He could see Mr. Jenkins watering his garden, Mrs. Lopez walking her dog, and even a couple of kids playing tag down the street. It was peaceful, perfect, the kind of day that made Max feel like nothing could go wrong. He tilted the drone left, then right, making it dance in the sky. "You're a star," he said to it, laughing. But across the fence, Ms. Grayson wasn't laughing. She stood in her backyard, hidden by a tall bush, her phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was low, too quiet for Max to hear, but her words were sharp. "I'll take care of it," she said to someone on the other end. "Don't worry." She hung up and stared at Max's drone again, her lips pressed into a thin line. Whatever she was planning, it wasn't good. Not for Max, not for his drone, not for the happy little world he loved. Max landed the drone gently on the grass, his heart full of joy. He picked it up and checked the camera, excited to see the footage. "This is gonna get so many likes," he said, imagining his friends' reactions. He had no idea that trouble was already knocking. No idea that Miss Grayson's sharp eyes had seen more than just his drone. No idea that this ordinary day was about to flip upside down, pulling him into something bigger than he could ever imagine. What was gonna happen next? That's what Max didn't know, and that's what made this moment so important. He was just a kid with a drone, chasing a dream. But sometimes dreams lead you places you never expected. Sometimes they lead you right into a storm. And Max, he was about to learn just how wild that storm could get. So here's the big question for you, watching this story unfold. Have you ever had someone try to stop you from doing what you love? Maybe it was a teacher, a neighbor, or even a friend who didn't get it. Drop your story in the comments below and let me know where you're watching from today. Oh, and if you're loving this tale already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, you're going to want to see how Max's Saturday turns out. It was Monday morning, and Max Carter was still super excited from flying his drone all weekend. He sat at the kitchen table, munching on cereal, replaying the cool spins and flips in his head. His drone was like his best friend, buzzing through the sky and catching awesome videos. He couldn't wait to get home from school and fly it again. But then a loud bang 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 shook the front door. Max's spoon froze halfway to his mouth, who was knocking so hard. His mom wiped her hands on a towel and opened the door. There stood Ms. Linda Grayson, the mean lady from next door. Max called her HOA Karen in his head, but he'd never say it out loud. Ms. Grayson's arms were crossed tight and her lips were squeezed together like she just tasted a super sour lemon. Her eyes were sharp like a hawk ready to swoop. "Your son's little toy is a big problem," she snapped, her voice loud enough for the whole street to hear. "That drone is noisy, it's dangerous, and it's against HOA rules." Max peeked from the hallway, his heart thumping fast, his stomach twisted into a knot. Rules? He'd read the HOA handbook cover to cover when he got his drone, just to be sure he wasn't breaking any. There was nothing about drones, not a single word. He wanted to shout that out, but his tongue felt stuck. Ms. Grayson's glare made him feel small, like a bug under a shoe. Max's mom stayed calm, her voice soft but firm. "Linda, it's just a hobby," she said. "Max isn't hurting anyone, he flies it in our backyard." But Ms. Grayson didn't want to hear it. She leaned forward, pointing a finger. "That thing needs to stay on the ground," she warned, her voice icy. "Or I'll make sure it's taken away for good." Then she turned and stomped off, her shoes clicking on the pavement like little hammers. Max's mom closed the door and sighed. "Don't worry, Max," she said, ruffling his hair. "She's just grumpy, we'll figure it out." But Max wasn't so sure. He felt a spark of anger growing inside him like a tiny fire. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He followed all the rules, stayed in his own yard, and never flew the drone near anyone's house. So why was Ms. Grayson acting like she owned the whole neighborhood? Why did she hate his drone so much? It didn't make sense, and that made Max's head spin with questions. He grabbed his backpack and headed to school, but his mind wasn't on math or spelling. All day he kept thinking about Miss Grayson's mean words. Noisy, dangerous. His drone wasn't like that. It was small, light, and quieter than a lawnmower. He'd even asked his neighbors if it bothered them, and they all said no. Mr. Jenkins, who lived on the other side, thought it was cool. Mrs. Lopez said it reminded her of a happy little bird. So what was Miss Grayson's problem? By the time Max got home, he was ready to fly his drone and forget the whole thing. He set it up in the backyard, checking the battery and the camera. The sun was low, painting the sky pink and orange, perfect flying weather. He pushed the buttons and the drone lifted off with a soft whir. It zipped up, spun in a circle, and hovered like it was saying, "Let's have fun." Max smiled for the first time all day. This was his happy place. But then he saw something that made his smile disappear. Across the fence, Ms. Grayson was standing on her porch, staring right at him. Her arms were crossed again and her face was hard like a stone. She didn't say anything, just watched. Max's hands shook a little, but he kept flying. "I'm not doing anything wrong," he told himself. "She can't stop me." The drone looped higher, catching the sunset in its camera. For a second, Max felt free. Then Ms. Grayson moved. She pulled out a notebook from her pocket and started writing, her pen moving fast. Max's stomach flipped. What was she writing? Was she keeping a list of every time he flew his drone? Was she planning something? He landed the drone and ran inside, his heart racing. "Mom," he called. "Ms. Grayson's watching me again. She's writing stuff down." His mom looked out the window and frowned. "That's strange," she said. "Maybe she's just keeping track of things for the HOA. Don't let it scare you, Max." But Max was scared, not the kind of scared you feel in a haunted house, but the kind where you know something's wrong and you can't figure out what. Ms. Grayson wasn't just being mean, she was up to something bigger, something sneaky. He could feel it, like a storm coming even though the sky was clear. That night, Max lay in bed staring at the ceiling. His drone sat on his desk, its little lights turned off. He thought about Ms. Grayson's warning, "I'll make sure it's taken away." Could she really do that? Could she take his drone, the thing he'd worked so hard for, the thing that made him dream of being a filmmaker? The spark of anger grew hotter. He wasn't going to let her win. No way. The next morning, Max checked the mailbox before school. Inside was a letter with the HOA logo on it. His hands shook as he gave it to his mom. She opened it and read out loud, "Dear Carter family, your drone activity is disrupting the community. Please stop immediately or face a fine." Max's jaw dropped. Disrupting? He hadn't disrupted anything. His mom shook her head. "This is ridiculous," she said. "I'm calling the HOA board." Max felt a tiny bit of hope. Maybe the board would listen. Maybe they'd tell Ms. Grayson to back off. But deep down, he wasn't sure. Ms. Grayson was the boss of the HOA. She always got her way. And that made Max wonder, why was she so determined to stop him? He didn't know it yet, but her big fuss about his drone was hiding something else. Something she didn't want anyone to find out. Something that could change everything. As Max walked to the school bus, he glanced at Ms. Grayson's house. Her curtains twitched like someone was peeking out. A chill ran down his spine. Whatever she was planning, it wasn't over, not by a long shot. The next week felt like a big heavy cloud hanging over Max Carter's head. Things were getting worse and fast. Max loved his drone more than anything. It was his way to dream big, to make cool videos, and to feel like he could do anything. So he kept flying it, even after Ms. Grayson's mean visit. But he was super careful. He only flew it over his own backyard, making sure it didn't go near anyone else's house. He didn't want trouble. He just wanted to have fun. But every single time that drone went up into the sky, Ms. Grayson was there. It was like she had a sixth sense or something. Sometimes Max would look over and see her standing on her porch, her arms crossed, staring at him like he was doing something awful. Other times, she'd be peeking through her blinds, her eyes narrow and grumpy. And then there was her little notebook. Max noticed she was always scribbling in it when he flew his drone. What was she writing? Was she keeping a list of every move he made? The thought made Max's tummy feel twisty, like when you eat too much candy. One afternoon, Max was setting up his drone when he heard Ms. Grayson's voice. She was on her phone, standing in her backyard, just out of sight behind a big bush. Her voice was sharp, like a knife cutting through paper. "Yes, I'll handle it," she said, and Max froze. He peeked through the fence and saw her glance toward his house. Her face was serious, not like her usual grumpy frown. Handle what? Max wondered, his heart beating a little faster. Was she talking about him, his drone, something else? He didn't know, but it felt like a secret, and not the fun kind. Max tried to shake it off. Maybe she was just mad about something else, like someone's messy lawn or a loud dog, but deep down, he wasn't so sure. Ms. Grayson wasn't acting normal. She was acting sneaky, like she was hiding something, and that made Max curious, even if it scared him a little too. Then the letters started coming. The first one showed up in the mailbox on Wednesday. It had the HOA's fancy logo on it, and Max's mom opened it with a frown. "Dear Carter family," she read out loud, "your drone is disrupting the community. Please stop flying it." Max's jaw dropped. Disrupting, how could his tiny drone, buzzing quietly in his own yard, bother anyone? He looked at his mom, hoping she'd laugh it off, but her face was serious. "This doesn't make sense," she said, folding the letter. "I'll talk to the HOA." But before she could, another letter came. This one was meaner. It said if Max didn't stop flying his drone, they'd have to pay a fine, a big one. Max felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. A fine that was money his family didn't have to spare. His mom was mad now. She called the HOA board and asked for a meeting to clear things up. Max felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe the board would listen. Maybe they'd tell Ms. Grayson to leave him alone. The meeting happened on Friday evening at the community center. Max went with his mom, his hands sweaty and his heart thumping. He didn't usually talk in front of grown-ups, but he wanted to be there. The room was full of neighbors, some friendly, some just curious. Ms. Grayson sat at the front looking like she owned the place. When Max's mom stood up to speak, she was calm but firm. "Max's drone isn't breaking any rules," she said. "The handbook doesn't say anything about drones. He's just a kid with a hobby." Max watched the board members nod and he thought maybe, just maybe, they'd agree. But then Ms. Grayson stood up. Her smile was smug like a cat that caught a mouse. "Rules are rules," she said, her voice smooth but cold. "Drones can be dangerous. They can spy on people. We can't have that in our neighborhood." She looked right at Max, her eyes daring him to argue. Max wanted to shout that he wasn't spying, that he only filmed cool tricks, but his throat felt tight. The board listened to Ms. Grayson, and the meeting ended with nothing fixed. Max and his mom walked home feeling heavy, like they'd lost a game they didn't even know they were playing. Max wasn't ready to give up, though. His drone was his dream, and he wasn't going to let Ms. Grayson take it away. He decided to keep flying, but he'd be extra careful. He'd stay low, stay quiet, and keep his drone far from her house. But every time he flew, he felt her eyes on him. It was like she was waiting for him to mess up, waiting for a reason to pounce. Then one night something weird happened. It was late, way past Max's usual flying time. The sky was dark, with stars twinkling like tiny lights. Max's mom was asleep and the house was quiet. He wasn't supposed to fly at night, but he'd just gotten a new camera lens for his drone, one that could see super clear even in the dark. Just one quick flight, he told himself, sneaking out to the backyard. He sent the drone up, higher than usual, watching the controller screen as it zoomed over his yard. The footage was amazing. The camera caught every detail, the trees swaying, the streetlights glowing, the houses all snug and sleepy. Max grinned, guiding the drone in a slow circle, but then something caught his eye. The camera showed Ms. Grayson's backyard and there was a car parked there. A strange car, one Max had never seen before. It wasn't shiny or fancy, it looked old, with a dent on the side. Two people were standing next to it, unloading boxes from the trunk. They moved fast, like they didn't want anyone to see them. Their heads kept turning, checking the darkness. Max's heart started racing. Who were they? Ms. Grayson's house was always so perfect, so quiet. She didn't have visitors, especially not at night. And why were they being so sneaky? Max zoomed the camera a little closer, just enough to see the boxes. They were plain, taped shut, and the people carried them into Ms. Grayson's garage like they were in a hurry. Max's hands shook as he landed the drone. He ran inside and hid it under his bed, his mind spinning. What was Ms. Grayson hiding? He didn't sleep much that night. The strange car, the sneaky people, the boxes, it all felt wrong. Ms. Grayson was always so bossy about rules, but now she was doing something secret, something that needed to happen in the dark. Max didn't know what it meant, but he knew one thing: he wasn't going to stop flying his drone. Not now, not when he'd seen something that made his stomach flip and his curiosity burn. The next day, Max woke up with a funny feeling in his stomach. He couldn't stop thinking about what he'd seen the night before, that strange car, those sneaky people, and the boxes in Ms. Grayson's backyard. It was like a puzzle he couldn't solve. He didn't want to get in trouble, but he was so curious. What was Ms. Grayson up to? He had to know. So after lunch, when the sun was high and the neighborhood was quiet, Max grabbed his drone. Just a quick peek, he told himself. He'd fly it over his yard, maybe tilt the camera a little toward Ms. Grayson's house. No big deal, right? He set the drone up in the backyard, checking the battery and the camera like always. His hands were a little shaky, but he took a deep breath. "You got this," he whispered to himself. He pushed the buttons, and the drone buzzed into the air, light as a feather. It hovered over his grass, spinning in a tiny circle. Max glanced at Ms. Grayson's house. Her blinds were shut and her porch was empty. Perfect, he thought. He tilted the controller, making the drone drift just a bit closer to her fence. The camera showed her backyard, neat grass, perfect flowers, and that same garage from last night. Nothing weird yet. Max's heart beat faster, but he kept the drone steady. And all of a sudden, Ms. Grayson's back door flew open with a loud bang. She stormed out like a tornado, her face red and her eyes wild. "That's it," she screamed so loud Max jumped. "I'm calling the police." Max's stomach dropped to his toes. He wasn't ready for this. Ms. Grayson held up her phone, punching the buttons like she was mad at them. "Hello, 911, she said, her voice all shaky, but Max could tell it was fake. "There's a drone spying on me. It's that kid across the street. He's breaking the law." Max's hands started trembling so bad he almost dropped the controller. Spying? He wasn't spying. He was just looking, just curious about those boxes. He yanked the joystick, making the drone zip back to his yard. It landed on the grass with a soft thud, and Max scooped it up, his heart pounding like a drum. He ran to the back door, his sneakers slipping on the grass. "Mom," he yelled, bursting inside. "Ms. Grayson's calling the cops." His mom came running from the kitchen, her eyes wide. "What happened, Max?" she asked, but before he could answer, he heard its sirens, loud waily sirens getting closer every second. Max's knees felt wobbly. He hugged his drone tight like it could protect him. His mom opened the front door and they stepped outside just as a police car pulled up, its red and blue lights flashing. Neighbors poked their heads out, peeking from windows and standing on porches. Mr. Jenkins leaned over his fence, frowning. Mrs. Lopez stood on her lawn, holding her little dog. Everyone was watching. Ms. Grayson was in her front yard now, pointing at Max like he was the worst kid in the world. "That's him," she shouted, her finger jabbing the air. "He's the one with that awful drone. Arrest him." Her voice was so loud it echoed down the street. Max felt his face get hot. He wanted to yell back, to tell everyone he wasn't bad, but his throat was all tight. His mom put a hand on his shoulder, squeezing gently. "Stay calm, Max," she whispered. "We'll fix this." Max looked at the police officer stepping out of the car. He was tall, with a serious face, and Max was sure he was in big trouble. But then something strange happened. The officer didn't walk toward Max. He didn't even look at him. Instead, he turned to Ms. Grayson, his eyes steady and firm. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low, "we're not here for the kid." Ms. Grayson's mouth opened, then closed, like a fish gulping air. Her smug smile, the one she always wore when she thought she'd won, disappeared. Max blinked, confused. "Not here for me." His mom's hand tightened on his shoulder. The neighbors started whispering, their voices buzzing like bees. What was going on? Max held his breath, waiting, his heart thumping so loud he could hear it. Then another car rolled up. It wasn't a police car with flashy lights. It was a plain, dark SUV, the kind you barely notice. Two men got out, both wearing suits and holding shiny badges. They looked serious, like they meant business. One of them stepped forward, his voice clear and strong. "Linda Grayson," he said, looking right at her, "we need to talk about those deliveries you've been getting." The crowd gasped like they'd all sucked in air at once. Max's jaw dropped so low it almost hit the ground. Deliveries? Did they mean the boxes he saw last night? Ms. Grayson's face went pale, like she'd seen a ghost. I don't know what you mean," she stammered, her hands twisting together, but her voice was shaky now, not mean or bossy. She looked scared, and Max had never seen her like that before. The second man in the suit shook his head. "Don't play games, Ms. Grayson," he said. "We've been watching you for weeks. Your little side business, it's over." Max's eyes got wide. Side business? What were they talking about? He glanced at his mom, who looked just as shocked. The neighbors were leaning closer now, their whispers getting louder. Mr. Jenkins muttered something to Mrs. Lopez, and she nodded, her dog yapping softly. Ms. Grayson took a step back, her hands waving like she could push the words away. "This is a mistake," she said, her voice high and squeaky. "I haven't done anything wrong." But the officer from the police car stepped closer, his face calm but stern. "We have proof," he said. "We know about the boxes, we know what's in them, and we know you've been sneaking them in at night." Max's mind was racing. The boxes, the ones he saw on his drone's camera, those sneaky people unloading them in the dark, it wasn't just random stuff. It was something bad, something Ms. Grayson didn't want anyone to know about. He clutched his drone tighter, his palms sweaty. Had his quick peek helped catch her? He didn't know for sure, but his heart was pounding with excitement now, not fear. Ms. Grayson looked around, her eyes darting from the officers to the neighbors to Max. For a second, she glared at him like she thought he'd planned this, but Max just stared back, standing tall next to his mom. He wasn't the bad guy here. She was, and now everyone knew it. The man in the suit pulled out a piece of paper. "We have a warrant," he said, holding it up. "We're searching your house today." Ms. Grayson's shoulders slumped like all the fight had leaked out of her. The neighbors gasped again, louder this time. Max felt a rush of something new, pride maybe. His drone, his little toy, had caught something huge. And Ms. Grayson, the lady who acted like she ruled the world, wasn't so powerful anymore. The street was buzzing with noise as the police officers walked Ms. Grayson to their big, dark SUV. Her head was down and her hands were twisty, like she didn't know what to do with them. Max stood next to his mom, his drone hugged tight to his chest, watching it all happen. The neighbors were whispering, their voices like a swarm of bees. Everyone wanted to know the truth. And then it came spilling out like water from a tipped bucket. The officers started talking, and Max's ears perked up. Those late-night deliveries he saw on his drone's camera, they weren't just regular packages like books or clothes. Ms. Grayson had been doing something bad, really bad. She was sneaking stolen stuff into her house, things like fancy jewelry and electronics that didn't belong to her. Then she'd sell them online to make money. It was a secret business, and she thought nobody would ever catch her. But the police had been watching her for weeks, building a case like detectives in a movie. And guess what? Max's drone footage, the one that caught that sneaky car in her backyard, helped them figure it out faster. Max's jaw dropped. His little drone had done something huge. The neighbors couldn't believe it. Their mouths hung open and their eyes were wide. Ms. Grayson, the lady who acted like she was the queen of Willow Grove, was the real troublemaker. She was the one who'd been breaking rules, not Max. All this time, she'd been bossing everyone around, complaining about grass and mailboxes when she was hiding a big secret. Mr. Jenkins shook his head and muttered, "Who would have thought?" Mrs. Lopez hugged her little dog closer and whispered to the lady next to her. The air felt electric, like everyone was waking up from a weird dream. Max's mom squeezed his shoulder, her smile soft but proud. "You did good, Max," she said quietly. Max felt his chest puff up a little. He hadn't meant to catch Ms. Grayson, he was just curious, but now he felt like a hero in his own story. Things moved fast after that. The HOA board, the group that made all the neighborhood rules, didn't wait long. They had a big meeting that same week and everyone showed up. Max and his mom went too. The room was packed with neighbors, all talking about Ms. Grayson's tricks. When it was time to vote, every hand went up to kick her out of the HOA. No one wanted her in charge anymore. She wasn't the boss of Willow Grove, not now, not ever again. A few days later, a letter came in the mail for Max's family. It was from the new HOA leader, Mr. Thompson. Max's mom read it out loud. "We're sorry for the trouble with Max's drone. There are no rules against it. He can fly at any time." Max grinned so big his cheeks hurt. The drone bans were gone. He could fly whenever he wanted, and nobody could stop him. The next weekend, Max took his drone out to the backyard. The sun was shining, and the sky was blue as a robin's egg. He sent the drone up, watching it buzz and spin like a happy bird. This time, he didn't feel nervous. He didn't look over his shoulder from Ms. Grayson's grumpy face. Instead, he saw something new. Mr. Jenkins leaned over the fence, waving. "Nice moves, Max," he called. Mrs. Lopez walked by with her dog and gave him a thumbs up. Even the mailman, who usually just rushed by, stopped to watch the drone loop in the air. "Keep flying, Max," he said with a grin. Max stood taller, his hand steady on the controller. Those same neighbors who used to roll their eyes or sigh when they saw his drone, now they smiled, they cheered. They saw Max for who he was, a kid with a big dream who didn't let a bossy bully stop him. He'd shown everyone that even a kid could outsmart someone like Ms. Grayson. His drone wasn't just a toy anymore. It was proof that he was brave, smart, and not afraid to keep going. As the drone soared high, Max felt like he could do anything. The whole neighborhood felt different now, lighter, happier, like everyone could breathe easier. Ms. Grayson's house was quiet, her blinds shut tight. She wasn't out measuring grass or writing mean notes anymore. And Max, he was just getting started. The sun was dipping low over Willow Grove, painting the sky with streaks of orange, pink, and purple. It looked like a big, happy painting, the kind you'd want to stare at forever. Max Carter stood in his backyard, his drone ready in his hands. He felt different now, bigger, stronger, like he could take on the world. He pushed the buttons on his controller and the drone buzzed to life. Up it went, zooming into the colorful sky, spinning and diving like it was dancing with the clouds. The camera caught every twist and turn, making a video that Max knew would be awesome. He grinned, his heart feeling full. This wasn't just a flight, it was a celebration. Max thought about everything that had happened. Just a few weeks ago, he was scared. Ms. Grayson, the grumpy lady who bossed everyone around, had tried to stop him. She called his drone a problem, sent mean letters, and even got the police involved. Max had felt so small then, like his dreams didn't matter. But now he knew better. He'd kept flying, kept dreaming, and because of that, the truth came out. His drone, his little toy, had caught something big. It showed everyone that Ms. Grayson was the one breaking rules, not him, and that changed everything. As the drone looped high above, Max looked around his neighborhood. Willow Grove felt like a new place. The houses were the same, with their neat lawns and bright flowers, but the air was lighter. People weren't afraid of